game of life and the hero's journey we all experience. Let's jump in with our host, Dylan Watkins, as he introduces today's guest.
How do you feel about guys named Joe and crypto? What about innovative microtransactions and business models for using crypto technologies? On this podcast, I have Joe Pinto. He was born and raised in Los Angeles. After spending 4 years playing professional baseball for the Chicago White Sox farm system, he co-founded his first venture, Barpay, in 2015 with Daniel Wagner. In 2021, him and Daniel co-founded Haste, the world's first instant leaderboard payout arcade. Pinto's vision for Haste is to have a platform serve as a fun and entertaining visual representation of microtransactions and how they can empower new business models. So without any delay, I'd like to welcome Joe.
Thanks,
hey, Joe.
How's it going?
Buddy. Good, man. Good. I'm excited to have you on, man. It's a really good use case for crypto technologies and microtransactions, business models. I think people are trying to find creative ways to get paid online these days. And so I'm excited to learn about, what you have here as Haste and how you came about with it.
Well, I love talking about it. Micropayments is kind of what got me excited about Bitcoin back in 2014, 2015, when I first started learning about it. And yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going with a lot of these things, these kind of gig economies, these systems. So you have Lyft and Uber or, whatever it might be. And I think these little micro payout systems where people are like, hey, I don't want to have a normal job. What could I do to kind of get paid some cash that isn't the typical 9 to 5? And I don't want to spend, 3 hours driving in traffic, moving 3 miles in LA, to get to where I want to go. These microtransactions and these payout systems, can you talk to me a little bit about, you said you like talking about, like, how did you get started with it? How did you said you had Barpay and then you switched to this. What caused that to happen?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right in the sense of that, you have all this gig economy, these people, trying to monetize on their own, but having to spend serious time commitments to do that, like the 3 hours of driving Uber. And that's where I think, micropayments in general can allow people to make money for things they're already doing. So the same way that Uber, right, if you have a car, you can now monetize your car. It does that, but on a much smaller scale for much more simple things. So to answer your question, how we got around to the Haste Arcade, like you said, I played baseball after college. I was in the farm system for the Chicago White Sox. I met my business partner, Daniel Wagner. He was also in the minor leagues. And we were roommates and just kind of had like the same ideas in terms of after baseball was over, what did we want to do with life? Neither of us really wanted to stay in baseball. We didn't think that, if you don't make it to the big leagues, it's not really the lifestyle that either of us really saw ourselves living. And, in that minor league lifestyle, you're typically finishing your games around 10 or 11 o'clock at night. You've got 45 minutes to an hour to get food after the game and then get back to the hotel before curfew. And if you don't make it back in time for curfew, you either get fined or you don't get to play the next day, something like that. So, in these smaller towns, usually around 11 o'clock at night, the only things that are open are bars or, taverns and whatnot. And some of these towns are college towns, so it's like really busy environment. And we kept having like the same problems where it's like every time we would go out, it would take us 10 minutes or 15 minutes to get our check just to leave. Like we're not even there to party. Or it would take 10 minutes to get an order in because the bar is super busy. And we're just like, man, this is causing us to miss curfew. We forget our credit card sometimes. And the next day it's like, oh, I'm in, Lexington now. Yesterday I was in Birmingham. So now I have no access to money because I don't have my credit card. It's at the bar I was at last night. It's just like all these frustrations kept adding up to the point where, we're just like, there's got to be a way to solve this problem. And that was the time, that was about 2014 when, people were developing apps for everything. I think like Uber was just becoming sort of mainstream. It'd been around for a while, but no one had really heard of it yet. We were crazy enough to think like, oh, well, we can just create an app where you can order and pay for your food and drinks and, you'll never have to give a credit card over. So our careers ended that year. I got released mid-season in 2014. I think Dan, at the end of the 2014 season, they didn't renew his contract. He's from North Carolina, Charlotte area. I'm obviously from Los Angeles, but we just kept in touch. We kept bouncing the ideas off each other. But the idea of ordering and paying for your food and drinks from your phone just kept sticking. So it got to the point where we decided, we think we could probably raise some money from friends and family, get this developed, and in less than a year we'll be billionaires, we'll have yachts, like it'll be sweet. Obviously, we're probably a little bit naive on that, but I had a bar owner friend from USC where I went to school who owns like, there's only one bar there, or at least there was when I went. It's like this legendary, been around for 60 years type deal called the 901 Bar and Grill. And the owner I got to know pretty well through my time there. So basically took this idea to him. He, tore it apart, said, this is what's wrong with it, blah, blah, blah. But if you can fix these problems, that'd be something I'm interested in. And one of his biggest issues was credit card processing rates. And so this is how we started down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, if you will. So, researching credit card processing rates, learning about interchange rates and why, when you go to a gas station, for example, if you buy something that's less than $5, they charge an extra 50 cents. Well, that is because they're having to pay an interchange rate that has a fixed cost of anywhere from 20 to 30 cents on it. So that's a big percentage, right? If you're buying a candy bar and 15% of that sale is going to the credit card rate, it's not a very efficient way to process payments. So all of a sudden, in our research of this stuff, this thing called Bitcoin makes its head known. And the promise, at least back then, was Bitcoin could be sent extremely fast. So basically instant transactions for fractions of a cent. And we're looking at this and it's just like, wow, a credit card takes 24 to 48 hours for the funds to actually show up in the merchant's account. And it's going to cost them, an average digital payment. The cost is just a flat 2.9% and 30 cents on that transaction. If we could figure out a way to get this Bitcoin thing into Barpay, we could really undercut the entire processing industry. So we never actually got around to doing that with Barpay, but it got us in the Bitcoin mindset and down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, reading the white paper, learning about, wow, what else can you do with this technology? What's this thing called micropayments? People are able to spend less than 10 cents online. That's not possible because of credit card processing rates. But now all of a sudden you have this new technology called Bitcoin where you can do that. And it just kind of blew our minds. And this was before, the price was ridiculously high and people were just buying it because they thought it was an investment. Mm-hmm. We never really bought into that narrative. We always thought, the title of the white paper is pretty clear. It's a peer-to-peer electronic cash. And the use cases that you have for something like that, in my mind, are basically infinite. You could come up with all sorts of business models where you're monetizing, a penny per minute or a penny per 10 minutes or whatever, or even a fraction of a cent like what we're doing in the Haste arcade. So to kind of tie that all together, Barpay still exists today. We've got, I think, about 15,000 accounts at this point doing either, QR code digital menus. We were one of the very first to do that, or the whole order and pay system still exists. But it was last year, 2021, we're sitting in the office. It was, I think, January 2nd, maybe still a little bit hungover from New Year's, and just kind of scratching our heads at why this Bitcoin that we had originally come across in 2014, 2015, because of its utility, was all of a sudden valued at, $50,000 or $60,000 when in our mind, you couldn't use it anymore. It was now expensive to send it. It took forever for the transactions to happen. Yet people were, losing their minds about this quote unquote digital gold thing. And we just never really understood that. So we're just like, okay, what could we actually build, over a weekend that would demonstrate, what we thought one of the original proof points of Bitcoin was, and that's just demonstrating micropayments. And so just ended up coming up with this really simple, silly, Dan will call it stupid game sometimes, where you select, what do I want to play at? 1 penny, 10 pennies. So a dime, $1, $10, or $100. You hit play game. The screen on your phone goes completely black. And then at some point in the next 2 seconds, a little yellow dot would show up. And the whole point of the game was just tap the dot as fast as you can. And so your score was measured in the amount of milliseconds it would take for you to tap this dot. So let's say you play, yeah. You tap it in, 327 milliseconds. You get somewhere on a leaderboard. Say you're position number 7. You're the 7th fastest person. I come and play. As soon as I hit play game, because of Bitcoin, the original protocol of Bitcoin, you would actually get a fraction of the penny that I just spent to play that game, regardless of what my score is. So I hit play game and ping, your wallet instantly receives, a 1/10 of a cent or 1,000th of a cent or whatever the gameplay level was. And then I would play the game, maybe I got on the leaderboard, and then anyone that plays after me, for as long as I'm on the leaderboard, you're still on the leaderboard at this point. But anyone that plays after us, we're going to get a fraction of their gameplay until we're no longer on the leaderboard. So we didn't think much of it. We just thought it was a cool way to demonstrate micropayments to our friends, because most of them would come to us I just don't get this Bitcoin thing. And, to be honest, we didn't either. We didn't understand why this thing that you couldn't do anything with was $60,000. But there are forks of Bitcoin, of BTC, that we felt had actual utility. And so the actual one that we use is called Bitcoin Satoshi Vision. So BSV is the symbol for it. And in essence, that's the one that we built all this on. It's just like, this one still works the way the white paper, described. This one scales to hundreds of millions of transactions and all that stuff. We think we could build this little game on that. We did, it worked. And, that was, in our minds, that was just going to be the end of it. It was just this thing that we were going to, show our friends, and so be it. But about a week after we put that game out, a VC group, a VC company, ended up writing an article where they took our leaderboard payout structure and they applied it to the game Flappy Birds. Back from like 2014, 2015, Flappy Birds had about 50 million people playing, on a daily basis at its all-time peak. And what this VC company ended up saying was, from our estimates, the developers of Flappy Birds were making probably $50,000 a day from ad revenue, which that's really good money. That's great. You got 50 million users making $50,000 a day from ads. Fantastic. The players, obviously, they're not making any money. They're just playing the game. They're having fun, probably seeing some ads. But when they plugged in our leaderboard payout structure at the 1 cent model, and the way you think about it is you put 1 penny in and 10, 15 different people get a fraction of that cent. The game developer is one of those people. At the 1 cent level, with 50 million people playing, the game developer would have gone from making $50,000 a day in ad revenue to $2.8 million a day in transactional revenue. The person that had the number 1 spot on the leaderboard would have been making about $250,000 a day. So when we read that article, we didn't even know that. And we're just like, wow, you know what? This actually could be something interesting for the gaming industry. And that's kind of led us down this road now to building out the full Haste arcade.
Okay. So, by the way, I'm hearing some audio. I think my audio is going through the system. Just a heads up on that. I think it stopped. But just to talk about this a little bit. I mean, this so happens a lot in entrepreneurship where you're working on a business, it's not working, it doesn't do a thing, whatever. You make a thing as a goof, and then all of a sudden that thing turns out to be actually really useful. And what you're saying is, from what I understand, let me parrot it back to you, see if I got this, is that you created a unique business model that says, hey, if you're on a leaderboard and you pay to get on that leaderboard by you basically ante up to get on, and you make it to that leaderboard, anytime anybody else tries to make it on that leaderboard, you get a fraction of what they paid to attempt to get on that leaderboard. So basically all the leaders that are on the leaderboard are getting paid for being the top performers, while everybody else is trying to get to the top so that they can get to the top and then earn money the same way passively the other leaders did on the leaderboard. So if I playing Tetris or anything else and I get to the top 10, and then I pay $1 to get inside of there, and I get to the top 10, every time someone else tries to pay $1 to get to the leaderboard, whether they make it or they don't make it, I get a fraction of that dollar for the people that try to get there until somebody kicks me outside of the leaderboard. And then it's their turn to make it to the top and earn all those passive income. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. Yep. Nailed it.
Awesome. Okay, so that's fantastic. That's an awesome. And then you took it and said, okay, well, what happens if we take the biggest name, the most used gaming platform like Flappy Birds, and we applied our model to that really hot industry, which is really part of the things. If you're taking something that one of the challenges of these payment systems like crypto games, one of the things I have challenges with is generally the games aren't fun. They kind of suck. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, games aren't great that they make. And so people will buy land or they'll do something else. And it's not it's a fun game. So you took, okay, what's a really fun game model that people like to play? People like to make money. And then you combine those two together as this leaderboard mechanism system. So it sounds like that's where you're going with this. Can you talk to me about, okay, so you saw that there's an opportunity here. What were the next steps after that?
Yeah. So, and to be clear, the games in the arcade right now, they're marginally fun. They're not, they're not Grand Theft Auto yet. All right. I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, we're the best game developers. No, it wasn't about that. It was about just demonstrating the leaderboard payout structure. So what we ended up doing, and we've said this from the start, like Dan and I, we're not game developers.
Sure.
We have a team now. There's 8 people in total. We do have some, legitimate senior level developers, but even there, no true game developers. And what we thought would be interesting was, that example we just talked about with Flappy Birds, where a game developer can go from making 50 grand a day to 2.8 million bucks a day, right? We think that's going to be attractive to actual talented game developers. So we built the software developer kit that basically allows you as a game developer to come in. You can build your game, make it as awesome as you want. And if it has a leaderboard in it, you can basically take our SDK, our software developer kit, and just plug it into your game. So you don't have to worry about programming or coding any of that. You can just focus on making a great game and then plugging in the SDK that we've provided. And now you're, number one, you're monetized instantly from the very first gameplay. Number two, your customers aren't going to have to see ads. And number three, we're going to give you an audience to already start, playing your game. Because that's one of the things for these casual game developers, very few of them actually make money. Think about it. You build a casual game like a Flappy Bird type thing. It's basically got to go viral to get to the point where you can make some significant ad revenue. And even then, you probably have to spend some money to advertise your game to get people playing in the first place. Whereas with us, you're monetized from the very first gameplay. Sure, it's a fraction of a cent, but if it's a fun game, we have a user base now of over 10,000 people. So you're going to get gameplays right away when your game hits the arcade. And if it's fun and people like it, you'll start seeing some legitimate revenue, within the first couple of weeks of actually loading up the game. So, that was kind of the initial thought. And what we wanted to get done first was build the SDK so that more advanced game developers can go ahead and, use this structure. And at this point, I think there's 15 games in the arcade. About 8 of them have been submitted from third parties. So, there's people using the SDK, which is awesome. And then 7 we've built in-house. And again, they're the ones that we've built. They're fairly simple. They're not very complex. The most recent game we released about a week and a half ago is a home run derby. It's actually pretty cool. I think it's a 3D game. And that one, it's a little bit better than a hyper casual game. But yeah, in general, right now, hyper casual games, I would hope down the road, if this ILP concept catches on, you do things like in Call of Duty, you're playing in online mode and you can have a leaderboard for headshots or a leaderboard for death kill ratio or for, knife kills. Anything
Question
you can
for you.
basically apply this to, because you're just talking about playing with pennies. The idea is like, this game is really fun. I'll stake a penny or 10 cents. And if I do well this game, I'm going to make some money from it. If not, I'm still going to have fun.
So you're talking about SDKs, and I'm a game developer. So what application is this on? Is this for Unity, Unreal? What's your software development kit on?
Yeah, we have games on both Unity, Unreal.
So is your SDK for, is there a Unity plugin and is there an Unreal plugin for the SDKs?
I'm not the technical one. I'm going to say yes, though, just because I know that we have games that are both Unity and games that are Unreal.
Somewhere there's a developer freaking out listening to you right now going, don't tell them that we don't have that in our system yet. We're not ready.
Yeah, well, they're used to me spilling the beans way too early anyways. Yeah. So, but no, we have the documentation. It's hastearcade.com/developer. So the documentation is pretty solid. You can definitely go check that out. I'm sure it can answer your questions way better than I could. Or just on Discord, you can talk to our developers. They're there. They're willing to help walk people through it.
Sure. Well, because when you're talking about developers and who they are, because again, I primarily focus on virtual reality. I build virtual reality applications and games and things like that, as well as this podcast. And the reason why I'm asking that is because there's different groups of people. There's Unity developers, there's Unreal developers, right? And they both use game engines to make the games. And primarily, if you're developing on them, you want to know which one it is, because if you're built Unreal developers, they're two. It's like, it's like I build things for gamers. So, well, is it for Sega or is it for Nintendo? Which one is it? And it's okay if you don't know, but that would be a good thing to find out what that is and what that looks like, so that we'd actually know, what that looks like. I'm going on your website here and I'm looking up the SDK, so maybe we'll find out here in a minute. But what I like about that, I think it's a really fun leaderboard. I have one of my games that I have is a kind of a competitive climbing game in VR. So you race across candy and you're the fastest ones. You're on leaderboard, and you get the butt kicked out and you drop off of it. I'd be curious. So primarily what you have though, it's web enabled. Is that people play the games? They're on the web platform and they download.
Web apps right now. I think eventually there will be a native app, but right now it's web applications. Typically you can play them on mobile or your PC.
Got it. Okay. Very cool. And when you say ILP, you're talking about Instant Leaderboard Payouts. Is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
Got it. Did you coin that phrase, or does that come from something else?
To our knowledge, we did coin that. There is another ILP that we learned about a couple weeks ago, which it's not similar to like gaming, but we can say Instant Leaderboard Payout trademark, and we can say ILP Gaming trademark, I guess is the way I would put it.
Got it. Very cool. And as you've been growing these things. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you have to do growth hack kind of things. There's situations where you got to figure out, how do I make progress? What does it look? How do I get more awareness? And that's one of the biggest challenges is getting, especially when you have a two-sided marketplace, right? You have people that are playing the experiences, and you need to get developers to do it. So creating that marketplace can be amazingly beneficial, but it also can be an absolute bitch trying to get that up and going. Can you tell me about a story or a time that you've been able to actually get traction? What activities or things you've been able to do to actually be able to get traction, either on the get it more developer side or to get more player side of things?
Yeah, for both, we've definitely tinkered and tried different things. For the developers, we had like a very early on developer competition, which was more to test like the SDK and basically see like, how are our developers going to interact with, game developers who are trying to get their game through the finish line with this. So I think that got like 4 or 5 new games in the arcade. It went well. We didn't really have any big hiccups there. So from a game developer standpoint, that's been the biggest thing so far. We're doing other stuff like working with, universities. So USC, UCLA, UC Irvine. There's obviously a huge like gaming, kind of ecosystem out here in Los Angeles. Just getting in touch with those student developers, with the professors, trying to get this concept in front of them, and then going to some of their different events and conferences. Like USC is having one on November 10th that I think we're going to be a part of, which would be pretty cool to get in front of. They said about 800 different student game devs who have a specific interest in blockchain. So that to me sounds like a pretty cool opportunity.
Is it a hackathon?
Gamers,
game jam? Is it a game jam? What you're talking about? USC game jam?
It's called Scale. It's a little bit, it's not game jam.
Got it.
It's put on by the Business and Entrepreneurship School. However, the guy that directs it, he's actually one of Haste's investors. He has like his own program within the gaming school, and now he's super into blockchain, so he's like kind of merging the two together. But that's called Scale. And that'll be on November 10th is what we've been hearing. So there's that. And then from the gamers perspective, we have, are you familiar with Built by Gamers? Have you heard of them? They're an esports team,
No.
esports club.
No.
Basically, we got in touch with them very early on. They just happened to be, for some reason, interested in the BSV ecosystem as well. And when they saw the arcade, they were like, wow, this seems like a really cool fan engagement tool. We're Built by Gamers. We have, teams for Valorant, Fortnite, Call of Duty. And basically, we would love to figure out a way where we could, promote the arcade to you guys. And then obviously, on our end, drive some revenue or something like that. So we ended up talking to them. We had a lot of mutual interests. They have a reach of, it's up to like 30 million views a month now amongst their different streamers when they're on Twitch and all that. So basically what we'll do with them is whenever a new game comes out, they'll pick a couple of their streamers that they think have an audience that would, vibe with that game, and they'll run like a tournament. So it'll be like, oh, Haste just released this new game, Monster Bombs. If I'm a streamer and I'm about to play Fortnite and my game's loading, I can just say, you can meet me after this stream in the Haste arcade. Use this link. You'll play in, the Malibu Monster Bombs tournament. And then, they'll do their own incentives to get people to play like $250 bonus, or you get a Built by Gamers hoodie or something like that. So that's been a cool like partnership working with them. They do other really cool stuff like creating content, like they've built videos for us. And then in return, we have within the games themselves, you have the leaderboard payout mechanism, but we can also do things on BSV, like with NFTs within the game. So this last game that I just mentioned, Monster Bombs, it's a home run derby. But what we did leading up to that was we sold physical like Haste arcade jerseys. And if you bought one, you got a digital copy NFT with it. And you can then take that NFT and equip it onto the player within the game. And to our knowledge, like we haven't seen anybody else that's actually been able to do that. We've seen like you can buy a physical item and get an NFT with it, but we've never seen people actually able to use the NFT as the next step. And I think that's where, you think about like major sports teams. If I go to a Dodger game and I buy a jersey or a limited edition hat in the team store, if I could get an NFT with that I could then go and put on my player in MLB The Show, like I think that would be a really, really cool thing to do. And I think that's where it's heading. So basically, doing stuff like that with BBG, more ways for them to engage their fans, more ways for their fans to get BBG content and to actually use it and feel like they're a part of the ecosystem. So I feel like those things have been really cool in terms of like onboarding new users.
And is the NFT, is that a part of the Bitcoin, or is that what's the NFT based on?
That is on Bitcoin SV. And that's, what's interesting about that is a lot of people think that Bitcoin can't do tokens and can't do NFTs, and that's incorrect. Basically, the original language that Bitcoin was written in by whoever Satoshi is, was more of an older script language. And the way that I would equate it would be like, if you read a book now, it would say like the sun came up. Mm-hmm. A book back in the 1800s would be like, on ye fourth day before like X, Y, and Z, when the sun hath crescent. Like, it was kind of written in a language like that, where when Satoshi handed over, the GitHub repository to the developers that ended up taking over it, they're going through the code, and there was a part that they literally didn't understand what the code said, so they just like slashed it out. Well, that part happened to be what was talking about what became known on Ethereum as smart contracts. And in the old Bitcoin script, they called it colored coins, which is the same thing. It's tokens, it's NFTs, it's smart contracts. So on BSV, they basically rolled back the different things that the BTC developers had implemented over the years. And they just restored it to the original protocol of Bitcoin version 1 when Satoshi first launched it and said, this can scale today past Visa and MasterCard. It doesn't need any of these things like SegWit. It doesn't need any of this other stuff that's been added onto it. They rolled it back to that. And sure enough, like, hey, there's colored coins. There's the ability to do tokens. So all of our NFTs are on layer 1 BSV chain. Yeah.
Wow. I actually didn't know that either. I was, that's it's very interesting to find out. And yeah, I mean, because in terms of like NFTs inside games that you can actually wear, I mean, that is, people are doing that. I haven't heard it on the Bitcoin side of things, but I mean, having those, the NFTs and being able to have them as digital items and goods that you can wear is something there. But it's also, it's a good value, because there is, I mean, in this day and age, for the younger generation, they value more so outfits and items and things that they are digital goods than actual physical wear. They'd rather have a digital pair of shoes for their avatar than they would actually have real shoes from Nike. So I really like
what I'm saying is they can have both now.
Yeah.
And they do. And I think that's what's fascinating. Like, imagine going to Starbucks, and getting a cup of coffee and then getting an NFT that you can go use in Grand Theft Auto, and it gives your player like 5 points of energy. Like, that's what it could be.
Yeah. Well, it's important. I mean, the thing about when you create those apparel items, it's a lot of it's around status. So it's in order to actually have that NFT mean anything, is that you want to actually have status. Like, if you're inside of if you have a game and no one's inside that game, and you have the best outfit ever, but you don't have anybody else to appreciate it, right? It's the, I don't know if you want to say
clout.
Like it's the clout. So my question for you then, and I really like this method, because you have two sides of this mechanism, right? You're talking about the heartbeat of building your company. One is game jams or other types of ways that you're inspiring developers to create games that people care about. The other one is you have influencers that are playing the games with tournaments. And so you create more games, and then you have the tournaments from the influencers pumping those in. So you have a community of developers building the games, and then you have a community of influencers saying, hey, I have a tournament, come challenge me, get into my board and see who can beat me. And then people come in and they play and they can compete and they can get NFT items. And if you're already a part of a community that way, then I could see how that would be a real good value add. Having an NFT a part of whatever streamer or people that are putting that together. What other things have you done because really community building is really critical, especially with NFTs, because you need to have people care about the community. So what have you done in the areas of community building to really generate value for these NFTs?
Well, we haven't like pumped NFTs, so to speak. We did promote these last ones for the Monster Bombs game, just because we thought that was something that had, utility outside of gaming in general. Like, that's something that we would love to demonstrate and call it Major League Baseball and be like, hey, you guys should be doing this with every item in your team stores. But we have our Discord. Our Discord is pretty lively. We have some characters in there that are quite animated at times.
Yeah.
But the majority of the NFTs, we're not charging thousands of dollars for these things. We're not, and you don't have to on BSV, right? Like, the gas fees aren't hundreds of dollars to buy and then move one of these things. You can buy these things for 10 cents, 20 cents. And so really, another example I'll give is our game called Jump. And that's another simple hyper casual game. You're basically bouncing a ball from platform to platform. The platforms are moving. And if you miss one, you fall into oblivion and the game's over. So some of the NFTs that we're selling there is just like a different color jump ball, or the ball has like a fire tail, or the platforms are a different color. And you're selling these things for 50 cents, right? So you're not going to run a huge marketing campaign to hype up the 50-cent platform. At that point, it just becomes, the person's actual preference. Like, oh, this is a cool background. It looks like futuristic, or like, oh, this is a wilderness themed one. Like, that's cool. Like, I'll spend $1 to have that. Whereas, with the Monster Bombs one, because the jerseys were real, the shoes that we did were real, the hats were real, there was more hype to that, I would say. And yeah, it was the typical, you have your Discord post, you have your Twitter post, you have your email blast that go out. But, it's still not in the thousands of dollars. I think the shoes were the most expensive. They're like these custom Nike ones that I thought were pretty sweet. I didn't actually get to buy any. They sold out. But I think those were like maybe $250. So even that's not like a huge ask, a huge spend. And there were only 10 of them. So it's not like, we're betting that we're going to make $100,000 off this NFT drop. And I think, that's kind of another just a thing about BSV is you think about micropayments, NFTs don't have to be hundreds and thousands of dollars. If you're a digital creator, you should be able to create a set of NFTs that I can use in Monster Bombs and be able to sell them for 5 cents a piece. What if it's just like a pair of batting gloves? Like no one's going to pay $100 for a batting glove NFT. Like I'll pay maybe 10 cents if they look cool, but that's it. And that again just ties back into the micropayment capabilities, what actually excites me about the utility of blockchain. It just further drives home that gig economy, that content creator economy that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. And if people want to, so can you walk me through step by step? So if someone says, "Oh, I want to play a game. I want to put 10 cents down and see if I can." I'm really awesome at tapping things, right? Because I mean, there's that. By the way, that is actually an Alzheimer's test to see how fast you can tap. Is that neurological test of how fast your hands can move? It's really interesting. So maybe not be the best for the Alzheimer's patients to be going in it, but that quick twitch movement with your hands is actually there's a lot of casual gamings that you can use that in. But if somebody wants to go up there and say they want spend $1 and see if they can make it to the leaderboards, like what would they do? What is the step-by-step process for that?
Yeah, so first off, you can play every game in the arcade for free. You would have to create a Haste account at that point, which is just going to be like your email address. We're not going to show like advertisements on the site. We don't have any banner ads or anything like that. The hope is that you play the games, try them for free, practice as many times as you want, see your score, and then be like, you know what? If I were to play on the 10-cent leaderboard, I'd have a pretty good shot of getting on the leaderboard based on my practice round skills. So at that point, there would be two different ways that you could actually compete for money. If you think about like eBay back in the day, you had to have a PayPal account to be able to spend money. If we're eBay, PayPal to us is this application called Handcash, and that's a Bitcoin SV wallet. It's pretty sleek. It looks kind of like Venmo. It works the same way. You can save friends. You can send money back and forth. And within that actual wallet, you can purchase Bitcoin SV, which is the currency that you have to use to play in the arcade. That's going to be changing to USDC fairly soon, just because I think it's a little bit easier for people to understand without the price fluctuations. But in essence, you could have your Handcash wallet. You can quote unquote top up, buy $5 worth of BSV. And then you can also sign into the arcade with the Handcash wallet. So it has like that authorization, but then you would just choose like your game level. So you pick the game, say you want to play jump. You'd pick the level you want to play at. Like I said, practice or nano, which is 1 cent, micro, 10 cents, macro, $1, mega, $10, high roller, $100. You choose that game or that level, you hit play, and the game starts. The other option would be, and this is something that is almost done being developed. It's not quite there yet, but if you're not comfortable with a Bitcoin wallet, we will have a way where you can just onboard yourself with a credit or debit card right through the arcade itself. So you'll add like quote unquote Haste credits. The difference between the Haste credits versus having the actual Handcash wallet is that when you have the wallet, you'll get those payments instantly. Like my phone blows up nonstop to the point where I have to actually like turn off Handcash notifications because it's like every 10 to 20 seconds, I'm getting a buzz like bzz, bzz, like 0.0001 cents like you just received from this game. So if you like getting that feeling, and what we kind of equate that to is, if you post something on Instagram, you start getting notifications anytime somebody likes the photo. It's a similar type of positive feedback loop. It's kind of the same type of thing where it's like, if I haven't gotten a payment in a while, I start to feel like, dang, like where's my payments? Like I need to go check the leaderboards. So if you do the credit system, you're still going to earn. You're just not going to see those payments flowing like instantly into your account. It's basically just going to be held within the arcade for you. And if you end up downloading a Handcash wallet, that'll all be deposited in your Handcash wallet. If you don't, you can use those payments to play more games within the arcade. So two main ways. If you're not comfortable with either of those, you can just play the games for free.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So what you're doing is you're creating almost like an in between. If someone's not comfortable with the cash, then you say, okay, well then we're gonna create our patty bucks, and you're
Yep.
gonna hold it right there, and then when it's ready for the transaction, whatever the price is of it at that point in time, then you hit transfer, then it transfers those things over.
Correct.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And as you've been doing this, as you've been growing this, actually, I have two questions. Let me start with this other one first. Is you talked about it going off consistent. Do you have an idea of the size, like how many people are playing, like say your most popular game, so you get an idea of the size of the pool of the market?
Yeah. So we've seen so far, and I mean, there's a couple hurdles. The Bitcoin
Mhm.
SV community in general is pretty small.
Yeah.
We've got, I mean, last I checked was earlier this week, 12,000 accounts. Last month was 2,400 active users. Okay. The month before that was about 1,800 active users. The month before that was about 1,000. So it's been growing at a fairly steady pace. And that's in part for the two things, right? The partnership with BBG that we talked about, the Built by Gamers. But then also we're running, paid social media advertisements. We're promoting the arcade the same way that most, online companies would promote, through Facebook, through Instagram, through Google Ads, etc. And what I find interesting about that is two things. Number one, like I don't know many companies, and I'll be honest, I don't know any companies other than the major exchanges, so like a Coinbase or a Binance or an NFT drop, that have actually promoted their product via traditional marketing means to the mainstream. I feel like most applications that are building on blockchain, it's just coming soon, and I could go into my theories on why that is. But in terms of what we want to do from day one was like, look, the crypto community is what it is. Like, it's very tribalistic. People kind of like pick their chain and they stick to it. That's fine. They can go and do that. If some people think this gaming concept in crypto is cool, that's great. But we're more interested in the mainstream gaming population, right? There's almost 3 billion casual gamers in the world. And we think that, if this notion of micropayments catches on, people are going to be interested in this concept we've developed. So we're marketing to the mainstream. And if it's crypto people that end up playing, great. But you could be scrolling through Instagram and see an ad right now for Haste Arcade, for one of our games, or for the overall leaderboard concept. So that's getting people in. And what I find interesting about that is when I look at our actual analytics and our data on what we're spending, what our cost per click is, what our cost per actual acquisition of a customer is, and then what those customers go on to spend relative to traditional casual games, like our metrics are insane. The stat that really blows me away, cost per click. Right now, what we're paying is roughly 3 cents cost per click. The traditional hyper casual game is somewhere between 18 cents to 25 cents based on the articles that I've seen. So I feel like that is significantly cheaper to at least get people to click on it. So the interest in this concept is there. And then when I look at the amount of spend per game, and I think that's because, in our games you can spend money to actually play the game. You can spend money on the collectibles, which are the NFTs within the game. There's different avenues for you to spend money, but the average spend of our user is also significantly, it's like 700% higher than what the traditional spend would be on a traditional hyper casual game. So when I see those metrics, in my mind, I'm like, okay, something about this is clicking. Something about it is at least intriguing enough to people to get
What do you
them
think about
to
it?
click on an ad at a higher rate than they traditionally would for this type of advertisement. And then they're spending money quicker than on a traditional type of game. And I think that's just a testament to micropayments, right? Like, you can't spend less than 99 cents traditionally on a game that's in the Apple Arcade. You could have like an account where basically you can upload $5 and then maybe, you buy a 10-cent item,
Mhm.
but that kind of goes away from the instant mechanism that Bitcoin wallets actually allow. So
Have
you
you
could
t-
have a database.
have you talked to any of your players to find out why they spend money so quickly?
It's the incentive mechanism. It's the fact that they want to earn from their gameplays. And I mean,
Mm.
like, there's players, it's actually a problem on some aspects where we call it the power law. There's some players who play these games so much that they get so good that their scores, like, they're not going to get beat. Like, there's guys that there's one person in particular, his name's Rainey. He's made thousands of dollars so far in the form of micropayments, just because, like, he's number one on every leaderboard because he's playing hundreds and hundreds of times every time a game comes out. So he gets really good right when it first comes out. Then he plays, gets the top score, and basically just collects money for months after that. So we think that it's, it's a combination. I'm not going to say it's because the games are like extremely fun. And I think that is another testament to this instant leaderboard payout mechanism. People are playing these games, consistently, despite how, fun / like just casual they are, because there is another reason to play them now. It's not just like, oh, the fun from the game wore out, so there's nothing else for me to do. It's like, I put in some time. I got good at this game, and I might not enjoy playing it that much anymore, but I'm earning $20 a week from it. So I'm going to keep playing, once or twice a week for the next couple months.
Yeah. It's that hope for the opportunity. And that's the thing. It's like, there's a huge divide with gamers and crypto people. And one of the big divides is don't mess with my fun. Is the gamers kind of terminology. Don't mess with my fun. This is supposed to be a place where you have fun. And it's not about the money, right? And then on the crypto side of things, it's like, hey, don't you want to play something that's fun and also make money from it at the same time? And I see these two worlds colliding, coming together. And it's really interesting because you're talking about this is like games are meant to be play. You play for fun, right?
Yep.
And it's that slide that you talk about. Like, well, I'm doing this for fun. And now I'm not necessarily having fun, but I'm doing it because I'm making money, which is it's that slippery slope between work and play. And sometimes it is fun just to win. And sometimes it's just like, it's fun to be at the top of the leaderboard and know that nobody can beat you and just to dominate them, even though you may not have fun. It's just fun to like stay at the top. So
there's another aspect too. It's the whole pay to win, which I know gamers are not like true gamers are not happy about, where it's the notion of, I'm not as good at Grand Theft Auto as you are, but I can go and buy, the best gun, quote unquote, the best NFT that gives me a power up. And now if we're actually playing for money against each other, I have an advantage just because I could afford a better weapon than you, even though you put in the time. So to be clear, like none of our collectibles do that. They're purely aesthetic. Go ahead.
I totally agree with you on that one. And that is absolutely, it's one of the biggest mistakes that crypto gaming companies make is you pay for power. Yeah. Pay for power is a great way to destroy a community. It's one of the best ways because all these a few people pay for power and then nobody else wants to pay because everybody else has rocket launchers and you've got a thimble running around, and because you won't pay, you get the crap kicked out of you. You're like, this is terrible. I'm going to leave. Right. Yep. And so, I mean, that's actually what I think is really interesting about it is like what you have is this skill-based games. Have you ever thought about approaching like Vegas and talking to them about like what you have as this leaderboard mechanism system? Because like they're trying to get esports in, and you have this kind of leaderboard kind of system going on. Have you ever thought about that at all?
We've given it some thought. I think originally we stayed away from Vegas or casinos in general, just because of all the regulations and all the hula hoops you have to jump through to get, actual approval to launch games like that.
Yeah.
But down the road, like 100%, what I would love to see and what we've talked about is like, I go to Caesar's Palace. I can go play blackjack. I can go play roulette. Or what if I go to the arcade where, like those basketball games where you just shoot baskets into the hoop? You can now gamify those with this leaderboard incentive mechanism. So maybe like Kevin Durant shows up at the casino and instead of playing blackjack, he actually goes and gets like the high score on the free throw contest. And it's like a skill-based game. So anybody can compete and has an equal shot. But Kevin Durant, is now able to monetize his skill even further just because like, wow, this casino has an arcade where I can actually like get on leaderboards and make money from subsequent gameplays. So yeah, I mean, we've given that some thought. We haven't really gone down that road quite yet. But one thing that we are building right now, which does take a page out of the casino book, is you think about online poker, right? Like poker rooms, all that stuff. Applying that same concept, but to casual games, skill-based games, and that's something that it addresses the quote unquote power law problem I was talking about earlier. Where it's like, I could walk into the arcade and see this guy Rainey scores or 50,000 and the highest I've ever got is 200. It's like I'm never gonna get on that leaderboard. I'm never gonna make money. But if I can go play in a tournament style where it's me versus 8 other people at this table in one given round, I have a shot, right? So that would be, I think, where we would first go in terms of taking pages out of the casino book. But I mean, eventually, yeah, like if we're able to get big enough and can afford to play with the regulators and all that stuff, I think the casino aspect would definitely be something that we're extremely interested in.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and as you've been on this path to grow this company, right? I mean, so you said there's always options, right? The challenge with entrepreneurship is that like there's 1,000 ways you could go, and then trying to stay focused on a path. What have you had? What I call threshold guardians, things that kick the crap out of you as you're being an entrepreneur. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, they had a great idea, they built it up, and now they're doing well, and they have a huge spike in users, and your growth of users. I don't know, like if people haven't actually built software or a game or whatever, they don't actually understand the value of what you're talking about, your growth of user base going up and up. That's a huge deal. And I'd love to talk about what are some threshold guardians or things that have kicked your butt along the road of you building up this company.
It's the power law problem that I've talked about. And
Yeah.
then it's, getting new users has not been a problem. Like our top of funnel is fantastic. Getting them to spend money is a big challenge. And the reason we think is like, we don't have the credit system yet, right? So you come to the Haste Arcade, it's this new thing, it's got crypto involved, so you're probably already a little bit skeptical. And then all of a sudden, the first thing we're telling you to do if you want to actually compete for money is completely leave our application, go to this other thing called Hand Cash that you've never heard of, give them your credit card and spend money. Like that, objectively, I can see like, yeah, that's a challenge. That's something that me as a skeptical person, I'd be like, what the heck am I doing here? So that's definitely, I think, like the overall, just crypto in general right now. And I think a lot of that ties into the false narrative of this digital gold thing. And I think, the market is basically falling apart because in my opinion, it was just a big Ponzi scheme. Like if there's no real utility to this thing called BTC, like where's the value coming from? I don't believe in the digital gold narrative. I do believe that something that is scarce and has utility could be extremely valuable. And that's why I'm a big fan of this BSV blockchain, because I see the utility. I see that it can process more transactions per second at a cheaper cost than Visa. And I see that it's also extremely scarce. There's only 21 million of them like BTC. But I think that, the biggest problem we're facing is that people just don't understand like blockchain. They've been sold it's this one thing that you don't actually use for anything, when in reality, we're trying to say like, no, you can use it for really cool things. Like here's another example of micropayments. 5 years from now, when we're driving on the freeway, we're sitting in our 3 hours of traffic at LA, Elon has us all in our self-driving cars. Well, if I need to get somewhere and I'm in a hurry, I will be able to send you, who is in front of me, 5 cents, 10 cents, whatever threshold you set, $2 to move your car out of the way so that my car can go past you, because I got to get somewhere. You're not in as big of a hurry. So now you're making money from things that you're already doing. You're just driving, you're going somewhere, your car is driving you, whatever. I'm getting value because I'm not spending what seems like an outrageous amount of money, and I'm getting to where I need to go faster. So I think once people can wrap their minds around like, hey, blockchain, Bitcoin is not this speculative investment adventure. It's actually a technology that you can use for things like micropayments, and give examples like that, or like the Haste Arcade leaderboard payouts. I think that's going to help us in terms of, the challenges that we've faced. So there's that, there's BSV in general. It's not the most well-known blockchain out there for various reasons. But like I said, in terms of, getting people in the door, not that big of a deal. Getting them to actually spend money, that's where the current challenge is.
It's the friction of the onboarding. Like if you have if you're online, it's super easy to click a button, you're playing a game. It makes sense. But all of a sudden it's like, pull out your credit card and do this, like too many steps. And then they bounce out of the funnel, right? You don't have your hooks in them enough. You haven't built up enough value prop to get them to stay and last and all that fun stuff. Because you either have to find people that already have that payment mechanism on their system ready to go, which shrinks your pool drastically. Or you have to have a larger pool of people, and then your drop off is going to be severe because pulling out that credit card, you might be who knows who's on the other side of that payment system, right? So I can see it though. It makes a lot of sense though. But I mean that's a good. You're at least getting people through the top of the funnel. It's just getting them down through the bottom of the system, which is a challenge. So let me ask you, what about all of this stuff? What is what I'd call is like your holy grail? What's your flag in the sand that you're hoping to achieve by doing all of this?
To be honest, like me personally, I believe that the original vision of Bitcoin could do a lot for the world. I think that fundamentally the way that money works right now with Federal Reserves, with governments paying interest to Federal Reserves that gets passed on to us in the form of taxes. I don't really believe in that system. I think it's fundamentally broken. And what attracted me to Bitcoin was obviously like the business use cases it could have solved for Barpay and the credit card fees. But the more I learned about it, the idea of a peer-to-peer money system, in my opinion, that takes the power out of money. Money then just goes back to cash. It's just a means of exchange. It's not something that, one body can actually control. Like the Federal Reserve right now can print stuff, and charge interest on it as they please. And so my end goal, like obviously I would love for Haste Arcade to blow up and be, the next Twitch or the next Roblox or something like that. And people are playing all these games and making all this money from it. I think that'd be fantastic. But even at a higher level, I would love for it to demonstrate, even if it's to, one person and gets them to see like, oh, wow, like I can actually use blockchain for these use cases. What else can I use blockchain for? And if we're successful doing that, I'll be ecstatic. Like I hope that people adopt blockchain in general the way that it was originally, Satoshi's vision, as cheesy as that is, like the way that it was mapped out from the guy that created it. I think that enables a better world. And again, at a higher level, here in the US, we probably don't care too much about paying a 30-cent processing fee on a credit card transaction. But you've got third world countries where, their entire, income for a week is $2 or $3. They can't afford to pay 30 or 40 or 50 cents for a transaction. So when you read, what Satoshi was talking about in his early blog posts and his early Reddits and all that, he's talking about banking the unbanked. He's talking about those people being able to transact, those people being able to do commerce on the internet now. Like the internet opened up the world for everyone to suddenly be communicating and hopefully have the ability to, the content creators sell something. But if you're in one of these countries where the credit card fees of 30 cents is actually, 20, 30, 40% of your weekly income, it just doesn't work. So the idea of Bitcoin, is to more so allow even people like that to be able to now commerce on the internet and actually be able to, make money. I think that is an incredibly powerful thing if it actually gets global adoption.
Love that. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that we're maybe not living in LA, you look at the finances and make sense, but third world countries, the dollar or the economics can go a lot farther. And so there's a lot of opportunity. That's why this whole gig economy, someone would rather have 50 small jobs and do it at their leisure than necessarily one 9 to 5.
Yep.
With what you're trying to do here with building Haste and everything else, what's what I call your dragon? Like, what is the thing so difficult to overcome that you might need to transform who you are and what you do to get to where you need to go?
I think the older I get, it's probably public perception, like if you haven't had a successful exit yet and you're watching your friends, getting married and having kids and you're basically still just like grinding away at this idea, this belief, this vision that you have, it gets tough. It's like, man, the public perception is, are these guys crazy? Like, are you ever going to get settled down? Don't you want to have a family? That type of stuff. And like, of course the answer is yes. But at the same time, like I'm, at least with myself, like I'm comfortable enough with who I am and what I'm trying to build and achieve. And I think Dan would say the same thing, that it's just like, this is what we're passionate about. And, I'm going to give this my attention. I'm not going to be half in, half out with this. I want to see it through, and whatever that means. If it fails, it fails, but I'm not going to let it fail and be like, oh, maybe if I would have given it more, if I didn't worry about having a 9 to 5 and just doing this in my spare time, because I needed to make money so I could live in an apartment. Like, that's just not good enough for me. I think that, I guess my quote unquote dragon would be battling internally the fear of what others would think about, what you're doing and lifestyle choices and all that. And it's funny, like I have plenty of friends who extremely successful, they've got their family, they got kids, it's awesome. And they'll ask me like, are you still doing that Barpay thing? I'm like, yeah, man, we've been around for 7 years. We've got like thousands of accounts. It's real. Like, it's not just like a hobby, but it's overcoming that and learning to just accept it. And it's like, look, this is the path we chose and here we are.
That's so funny. it's funny because people are like, pursue your dreams, go for it. Don't, and at the same time, you're like, you should be safe. You should get, is it really going to work out? That it's a weird thing because people want, especially people that care about you, want you to pursue your dreams and go for it and play big. At the same time, they're like, is there ever going to make it? I don't know. You might as well just do something normal. Right. And play safe. It's a really weird balance of situations that we live in. So, it's been awesome having you on the show. Is there anything else you'd like to let people know about before you tell them how to get a hold of you?
I think we've covered pretty much all of it. I mean, this was awesome. Really enjoyed talking to you. I really liked, what you had to contribute also. And yeah, I hope more people, start thinking down these lines, like the gig economy, the creator economy. I think if we can move towards that type of world, like in general, people will just have a better quality of life. Like it's to me, it's fascinating, that we live in an environment where you can do that, yet people are still choosing to go and make money for someone else. Like that's a very interesting concept to me. I can't understand why someone would bust their ass for 30 years for someone else to benefit more than them. Like that part doesn't make sense to me, but I guess the safety mechanism kind of comes into play there.
Yeah, it's a challenge, man. Life is a choose your own adventure story, So it's been awesome, man. Yeah, so if anybody gets a chance, try out Haste, and if people want to get a hold of you, Joe, how do they do that?
Yeah, so Haste is just hastearcade.com. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Discord at Haste Arcade. I'm actually not on most social media. I've kind of tried to avoid Twitter since learning about like the whole crypto Twitter is just a crazy negative place. Not really my vibe. But yeah, if you go on, we do have our Twitter. We're pretty good to get back at the DMs. That's usually Dan that's handling that. Discord, we've got a bunch of people in there that are happy to talk. And if you want to actually reach out to me directly, I can give my email. It's just joe@hastearcade.com. So those would be the best ways to do it.
Awesome. Like a true founder of a company, it's just his first name and then insert the website that they're attached to. So Joe, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you being on the show. Have a blessed and beautiful day, my friend, and I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you, Dylan. Really appreciate it.
Take care now. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes of Reality podcast. Check out heroesofreality.com for more episodes. While you're there, you can also take the Heroes quiz to find out what kind of hero you are. Or, if you have a great story and want to be on the podcast, tell us why your hero's journey will inspire others. Thank you for listening.